Now you might be thinking to yourself, I have good classroom management. I got my rules, I got my consequences, I got my procedures. But what if you could optimize your classroom management system so that you wouldn't have to be the Jenga block that holds your entire classroom management system together? Because that's a lot of pressure. Hello historians, welcome back. I'm Cecilia Tamez. I'm a veteran educator, consultant, and instructional strategist, and my mission is to help passionate history teachers like you feel confident and competent as they facilitate student-centered learning. Now I'm gonna hit you with some real talk. During my first and second year teaching, I would close the door of my classroom, turn off the lights, put my head down on my desk, and wonder why I ever became a teacher, okay? True story. In a nutshell, managing my classroom was wearing me out. So in this video, I'll be sharing 10 classroom management mistakes that are wearing you out and how we can optimize that so that your classroom management system works more efficaciously. Let's go. So the first classroom management mistake that's probably wearing you out here is having an outdated understanding of what classroom management is and what it entails. Now, you may have grown up with a parent educator, you may have seen a lot of Hollywood movies about teachers and teaching, you may have your own experience as a student to fall back on, but gone are the days when classroom management meant getting students to quote-unquote behave. Holding on to this idea that it is our responsibility to make our students behave is going to wear you out. So what I propose instead is that you shift to the mindset of a general manager. So think of what a general manager does at a supermarket or at a hospital. In the same way, we are the general managers of our classroom. We want to make sure that our students' needs are being met, that our needs are being met, that our learning outcomes are being mastered. You get the idea. Now, the second classroom management mistake that may be wearing you out is thinking that a student's behavioral response is always an attack on you, the teacher. Now, I get it. Sometimes our students are acting like little goons. They will curse at us. They will throw things. They will push our button. But here's the thing. A student's behavioral response is not about what they're doing, but instead what they're saying through those actions. Think of it as a cryptograph. What we need to remember is that all behavior is a form of communication. You have to understand that our students are at a cognitive development level where they may not be able to formulate, express what is actually going on. Now, this was very hard for me at first at the start of my teaching career, but I promise you, as time goes by, if you make it a point to focus on this and really hone your skill in self-control and self-mastery, it is a skill that you gain over time. Because let me tell you, early in my career, my first instinct was to light up like a firecracker. I'm feisty like that. So how do we retain that empathy for our students? How do we maintain that self-composure? Like, what is the secret key that can help me get ahead with that? Because maybe you might be saying to yourself like, ooh, those kids know how to trigger me all the time. And this is my advice to you and to my mentees who are enrolled in my personalized mentorship program. Empathy first. If you focus on being empathetic, because remember, we said all behavior is communication. We don't know what's going on with that student. It could be something big, it could be nothing at all. But because we don't know, we want to give that benefit of the doubt. So we want to lead with empathy in order to detach ourselves from feeling like this is a personal attack on us. This is about them getting to us and getting under our skin. Now again, this isn't something that happens overnight. You literally have to train your mind to be like, empathy, I don't know what this kid is going through, but obviously this is not normal for a child that is happy, that is well, that is not frustrated, that is thriving in life, you know, walking out of my class, talking back to me, cursing at me, etc., throwing their homework away right in front of my face. This is not normal child behavior. There's something that's frustrating this child. So if I take literally 5 seconds before I react to think of that empathy angle, that's going to help you detach. Now, this is also extremely beneficial to help you preserve your power as a facilitator. If you engage in a power struggle with a student just to save face, you've now removed yourself from being able to help the student process emotions, because now you can no longer be trusted. Now you've engaged with the student and you've engaged with their behavior, with their reaction. And remember, the thing is, if you engage and decide to be responsive to these behavioral outbursts, to these responses, and this doesn't mean like, oh, just disregard it and pretend it didn't happen and just let it go. No, it means you are going to pause. It means you are going to not react immediately. It means you're not going to react, maybe even publicly, even in front of your other students. It means you're going to address the situation when both you and the student are calm. So if you know that this child is pushing all sorts of buttons, you need to wait until you're composed, because your students will respect that. You are not a person that can be triggered. As a matter of fact, the more composed you're able to stay, regardless of the behavioral trigger, the more students will respect you. Because how can students trust an adult that tells them to settle down or to behave if they have no self-control themselves and immediately are reactive and immediately want to snap back? Retain composure, retain your power as a facilitator. Now, just to be perfectly clear, empathy first and focusing on empathy is a strategy to help you detach from being reactive. This is not about glorifying inappropriate behavior. What this will do, however, is de-weaponize behavior as the communication tool for your students. The third classroom management mistake that could be wearing you out is getting our feelings hurt or feeling indignant about the way students behave, act, or respond. Now, I have to tell you, as a teacher, you're going to see a lot of things during your career, okay? In time, because it does take some time, in time, you are going to have a skin so thick, the earth's crust layers will have nothing on you. Now, this is going to be a hard pill to swallow, but we have to understand that our students were raised in a different generation, maybe with different values than the ones that we have, different social norms. And just because they're not doing things exactly the way we were raised, doesn't mean that they're bad or trying to be malicious on purpose, nor should we get our feelings hurt or feel indignant. Because remember, everyone acts according to their social norms, what is right for them, what is correct for them. Now, this does not mean we cannot model what's acceptable, what makes us and what will make the rest of our students feel safe and respected. As a matter of fact, your ability to be flexible and tolerant with these differences is not only going to make your students feel safe, and remember, I said differences, not inappropriate behavior, differences. You'll be able to create a more collaborative classroom management system. Now, I do talk about this in a previous video, and I'm going to go ahead and link it up above for you. But in this video, I share several strategies that you can use to create a more collaborative classroom management system. When tempted to ruminate on something a student said, you have to know that our students do not know us well enough to hate us. Now, I know that all of us are different, but one final perspective, if we're getting our feelings hurt by something that a 13-year-old kid says or does, you are giving the opinion of this child way too much importance. And that also reflects some personal wounds that we ourselves need to address. The fourth classroom management mistake that's probably wearing you out is having this illusion of control. So in a nutshell, if you're getting worked up, exhausted day after day, is one of four things. One, you're teaching a class of pirates who insist on being little miscreants. Two, you may be lacking procedures that proactively and intentionally address classroom management issues before they happen. Three, you may be exhausted because you're micromanaging. Again, illusion of control. If you're micromanaging, it's because, we go back to number one, you feel entirely responsible for your students' behavior and behavioral responses. Or four, you have unrealistic expectations about what is typical for a child. And so if we're struggling with having this illusion of this is in my control, I can make my class behave. If you're struggling with this, we need to shift our perspective from control to influence. The fifth classroom management mistake is copying or comparing classroom management in your classroom with another teacher's class. Now, if you don't know this already, the comparison game in anything sets us up to feel like we're not doing good enough. It also inadvertently makes us have unrealistic expectations, because the reality is your student population and theirs is entirely different. They have different personalities, different needs. That teacher may have different tolerances that you don't. Now, I want to point out, having worked with several teachers throughout my career and working with teachers at the different campuses and districts that I work with, every teacher is going to have their own style, their own way. And there isn't like one way is better better than another. If students are learning, if they're safe, if they're enjoying class, if you're enjoying class, then your classroom management system is popping off. Living up or trying to live up to these unrealistic expectations will wear you out. The sixth classroom management mistake that's probably wearing you out is mistakenly thinking something is bad behavior. One of the most challenging things to get accustomed to, because it cannot be taught, it can only be explained and experienced, is getting used to, if you've not been a teacher, getting used to the cognitive level at which your students operate from, or two, if you're new to a grade level, getting used to that developmental stage and understanding what is normal for that age group, what behaviors are likely to be seen with students of that age. But instead of just categorizing everything as bad behavior and turning everything into a major power struggle, which inadvertently is going to wear you out, here's a guide you can use to determine if a behavior is acceptable. Even if you're just getting to know this new cognitive age group. A, is this dangerous behavior? Is it unsafe to students, to the teacher, to others? B, is it making others feel unsafe? So one is things that they're actually doing that are dangerous. B, is there something that they're saying or doing that's making people feel unsafe? So maybe they're not acting on it, but it's making people feel unsafe. And I don't just mean like danger, like, weapons and knives and stuff. I mean, even just emotionally unsafe. Anything other than that. So things like language, disruptions, distractions. These are more or less subjective, and they go back to the teacher's tolerance level. And they also go back to the cognitive level and the age group with which you work with. And we have to be mindful of not internalizing idea that all these are bad behaviors, because then it'll either stay or become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, this doesn't mean, just turn a blind eye to everything that's happening in your class. This doesn't mean be so passive about behaviors that you find inappropriate. And this definitely doesn't mean, forget the opportunity to redirect your students. No, it just means that we need to know our students well enough before we pass a criteria of this is bad behavior, right? Air quotes, this is bad behavior. Now, I talked about the importance of getting to know your students well enough. This is something that I highly recommend at the beginning of the year, and that is having students complete a student survey. This survey is going to help you understand your students' values, what they see as important, what makes them tick, what gets them engaged. And I did link the student survey that I use with my students, and countless other teachers have used with their students, in the link in the description below. Or you can also visit my website, gameplaneduSolutions.com, and I will link that here for you. Now, if you happen to be a bookworm like me, I also have a fantastic book recommendation. Again, this is great for teachers that are moving to a new grade level, or for teachers that are just starting off in their career and they're kind of nervous about gauging what behaviors are considered standard, typical, what they can expect. And that book is called Culturally Responsive Teaching by Zaretta Hammond. Highly recommend, and I will also link it for you below. It is going to change the way you manage your class, the way you engage with your students, and also what behaviors you choose to react or engage with. As a matter of fact, many of the things that you'll see in the classroom management portion of my mentorship program actually reflect these findings. And again, I did not, unfortunately, read that book at the start of my teaching career, but years later, with all the years of experience that I have, I was able to read that book and be like, yep. And I feel like it lends a lot of validation to what I teach my mentees, because clearly other educators also understand and agree that understanding our students and knowing our students matters. The seventh classroom management mistake that is probably wearing you out is escalating situations in your classroom that don't really need to be escalated. Now, I used to have a principal a long time ago that used to say, choose your battles. Now, I would totally roll my eyes on the inside, but it's true. So what does this even mean? Pick your battles. So we talked about acknowledging differences in upbringing. We talked about detaching yourself from behavior being personal. It's unfortunate, but sometimes we think that using our students' lapse of judgment is a great opportunity, especially when we're at our wits' end or we're taking things very personal, to embarrass our student into changing their behavior. And this involves humiliating students, roasting them, if you will, exploding on students, And what's going to happen? Students will become defensive. So our approach and our reaction is what's going to escalate or de-escalate a situation. This is why I tell you to implement that strategy of empathy first in order to detach yourself from the situation. When we talk about choosing our battles and not escalating things further than they need to go, it means we evaluate the behavior for intent. Is it unsafe? Is it dangerous? If not, we talked about everything else can be redirected, or we can also prevent it altogether by having proactive procedures in place. This also means position yourself, always strive to position yourself as the facilitator. That means we are not reactive to our students' behavior. And this involves self-control and offering options. And again, I talk a little bit more about how offering options is a great classroom management tool, and I will link that video up above for you to watch at the end of this video. If you find that a lot of situations in your classroom are escalating, it's because you're in a mindset of control versus collaboration. And the truth is, many of these circumstances could actually be de-escalated simply by you not reacting through humor or through offering options or alternatives. Oh, I'm sorry that doesn't work for you. Here's another pencil. Bada bing, bada boom. Problem solved. When you offer options, you open door number 4. Who knew? And so now you pull the student out of it's this way or I act up. Nope, surprise, there's another door we can walk through. So again, if you want to feel less tired at the end of the day from managing your students, your goal is to try to just de-escalate situations as much as you can. Okay, think of yourself as like that police negotiator who goes in and talks to the guy who's got, you know, all the, you've seen in the Hollywood movies, right? These negotiator guys, you're that guy. You're removing the obstacles or helping the student process whatever is frustrating this child so that we have the best possible outcome available. The 8th classroom management mistake that's probably wearing you out is creating a more stressful and tense work environment. So how does this happen? We talked about the importance of learning environment, and again, cannot recommend it enough. I talk about it in this video. Talked about how, and there are studies about this is not just me making this up. There are correlations to the amount of clutter, the amount of belongings that you have. That is directly relational to the amount of stress and anxiety it causes in folks. Creating more stressful, tense work environment also looks like having unrealistic expectations or time constraints. So if you're giving students too short a time to get something done, you're going to see the frustration in your students ramp up. And I understand that we're also under time constraints, but again, we don't want to exacerbate the tension or stress the students feel, because then we are priming for emotional outbursts, cornering students into activities that trigger deep-seated fears. I've had students that for the life of them, they would rather fail the reporting period than present in front of the class. They are so terrified. So if you are not offering options, we talked about the importance of opening door number 4. Offering options is a great way to help students not feel cornered into situations that's going to cause them to get defensive, holding on to grudges from a previous day's behavior. You are bringing yesterday's tension to today. And so now, kids can pick up on anything. They know, even if you act and smile and whatever, students know, okay? Energy doesn't lie. So if you're bringing that grudge to class with you emotionally the next day, you are, again, priming for emotional reaction, resistance, tensions, outbursts. And finally, I know that sometimes we have days that will really try us. And sometimes, and I'll be honest, sometimes that frustration gets to us and then we lash out or we're extra snappy with students, even if we know that the behaviors they're exhibiting are typical to their age group and it's something that you have a tolerance for. It's not unsafe. It doesn't make anyone feel unsafe. But again, because we're on edge, we create additional tension when we start micromanaging and nitpicking every single thing. We are no longer choosing our battles. So again, if any of these things are happening, you are going to be creating a lot more stress and tension. And that puts your students on edge, and that definitely is going to put you on edge and wear you down. The next classroom management mistake is following another teacher's classroom management strategies, their classroom management system, and then feeling inefficient, ineffective as a teacher when they don't work for your students. So quick backstory, when my first year as a consultant, I remember I was visiting a campus and, we were discussing other trainings that we found helpful. And there was a conversation about a training that they swore was going to be a waste of my time and that it just didn't work. Well, it actually ended up being one of the best trainings that I had personally ever been to. And honestly, I feel it really helped me to shift my perspective on my classroom management. Like I said, I felt I had good classroom management before, but this training with that shift in vantage point helped me optimize my classroom management. And so what are we learning with this? And I also talk about this in my teacher mentorship program, but essentially there are many different ways. There is no one size fits all for classroom management. If their strategies work for them, that means that they do work. They're working for somebody. If they're not working for you, here are some things to consider. You need to consider, how are you executing the system? What does that teacher do to make that system work for them? Because sometimes you may go to a training and say, oh, well, that strategy doesn't work for me. Well, how are you executing that strategy? Do you have the humor for it? Do you have the sauce to execute that particular strategy? And it doesn't mean you can never have the sauce. It just means that maybe that strategy is going to work with teachers that have certain tendencies or certain personality. You also have to ask yourself, how consistent are you with the execution of that classroom management strategy? If you're inconsistent, if you didn't implement it since day one, but you expect it to work because you've mentioned it a couple times in class, there's the problem. Number 3, again, we go back to this, very important, your knowledge of your students. Do you know your students well enough to know if this is going to encourage their collaboration? Is this going to get them engaged? Is this going to inspire them to participate? And for your student needs, is this something that's going to make your students feel unsafe, too vulnerable, defensive? Our next classroom management mistake is inadvertently creating disengagement or power struggles in your class. Now, one thing is when we're purposely reactive to a student behavior. The other thing is when we are accidentally, because we don't know our students well enough, we create a situation in which our students will be primed to act defensively. We can also inadvertently create these power struggles when we are adamant of having things always just our way and having our way be the only way versus collaborating with our student and essentially asking, okay, this is what we need to get done. How can we get this done while supporting your needs? You tell me. Because remember, if you're more focused on compliance than you are with what you are trying to accomplish with that compliance, we have our focus on the wrong thing. So this is what needs to get done. What is it that you need to get this done? How can I help you get this done? You tell me what you need and we'll make sure that it happens. When we collaborate with our students, we are empowering our students to share in that accountability for their own actions. The other thing is not scaffolding instruction. Without realizing it, we are creating tension with our students because they don't feel safe enough to fail in our class. You will find that oftentimes our instruction is actually very closely linked to our classroom management. The more engaged and empowered a student feels in their instruction, the less classroom management issues you will experience. If you found this video helpful, I invite you to consider being a supporter for this channel by becoming a member of the League of Extraordinary Teachers, where you'll get early access to new videos, behind the scene content, and more. You can also help me help other teachers by liking, subscribing, and sharing this video with a teacher friend. As always, I'm rooting for you. You got this, and I got you. Until next time, class dismissed.